Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am delighted to introduce our next session, CEO Insights from John Dawson, CEO of Oxford Biomedica, and Bianca Coulter, founder and CEO of Coulter Partners. Bianca, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm delighted to be here today and to be introducing you to somebody very interesting who I've known for many years. John Dawson is CEO of global biotech company Oxford Biomedica. It's a leading cell and gene therapy company, and over the last 13 years, after a career in major pharmaceutical companies, John has built a small cap biotech into a UK success story with an exceptional innovation culture. A business that partners with some of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies to help them bring their major innovations to market, including large-scale manufacture of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. So, John, thanks so much for joining us.
Very welcome. Pleased to be here. Thank you.
To set the scene, John, you've been through the ups and downs of building a biotech. Oxford Biomedica today is positioned very strongly for sustained growth. But help us a little bit by talking through the history and the fascinating growth story to set the scene for some of our questions about leadership.
Sure, I'll take you back to the beginning, probably the best place to start, before my time, but back in 1996, the company was formed, spun out from Oxford University by the Kingsman, Alan and Sue Kingsman couple. They came in, they started the company, and by 2001, they were on the main list. Now, that was a very tough place to be when I came in later on with a small market cap, but we came through that, we got to the further points, and we were a drug development company. That evolved slightly when we were having difficulties manufacturing our own drugs with CMOs, contract manufacturing partners, and so we decided to bring manufacturing in-house. That was purely for our own drugs at that point in time because we had seen such issues with the other partners doing this, and it was world-breaking at the time, so we didn't design the process and handed it over, so we decided we could best do it ourselves. That said, we then really were going down a path where we were purely drug development, making our own drugs. We were approached by Novartis to work with them on the Kymriah drugs, which they licensed in from UPenn and Carl June. And 13, we started working on that in the background. 14, our first commercial deal with them. And effectively from there, we went to market with them in 2017. And that's a very quick way to say that. But there were a lot of trials and tribulations between 14 and 17, and a few more after that as well. So it's been a long journey to get to where we are today. Kymriah was launched in 17. Now we have lots of other partners as well. To talk about the present where we are today, we're now a £1.3 billion company. We've grown from 60 staff, I think it was, to 750 as it is today, I think it is now. Back in 2014, it was only 60. And the market cap, as I said, 1.3 billion from about 30 million when I joined. So it's been quite a change. It's been down to a lot of great people in the company, a tireless commitment to people working very hard, especially working on the COVID vaccine to fight the pandemic. We got involved with that as well back in the beginning of 2020, and we did a scale-up process and got manufacturing working for that in about 5 months. And I'd say normally that would be about a year's work, roughly. So people work weekends. I remember talking to my guys at work Christmas Day and at work New Year's Eve and New Year's Day as well. It didn't stop because we had to get it done, we had to get it running and keep making it. So it's been really interesting. We now do our own diversified company where we make things for people. We also have our own drugs, and so we have our own portfolio we're bringing forward. We actually make lots of things for other people, and that's a secret of success, really. It's balancing those two things together for the future and making those work properly. Good summary,
Thanks,
I hope.
It's an amazing story, and I think what's very interesting for the audience today is really that, you know, you're a leader who has led through adversity, challenges, but also rapid growth and success. Can you talk to us a little bit about the different leadership that's required in these difficult times versus when things are apparently going smoothly? Of course, going smoothly doesn't mean you're not working 24/7.
Well, it's a different type of working hard, isn't it? When you're getting new deals and working into successful with cash in the bank, it's a different type of working hard. When you are actually on the cliff ledge, balancing to go step to the next place, wondering how you pay the bills in 3 months' time, that's a different pressure. And it's something that you learn to live with, something you learn to actually deal with. And a lot of companies get to that point. And I think it's all about the people around you. You cannot do it on your own. There's a whole team effort here to get through these issues. what I realized when I got to the company was that cell and gene therapy wasn't quite as advanced in the market as I thought it was. We took a few years to get going and get running with this. And when we did, we became far stronger. But effectively, we had to wait for the market almost to come to us, because the change in the world for us was Kymriah, without question. Probably without Kymriah being in our portfolio and coming through the markets and actually getting us the valuations we got because of that. Apart from that, I wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you for Oxford Biomedica. I think government grants as well played a huge part, but you have to play the game. You have to survive to the day when your business becomes strong because of market conditions coming towards you. And that's what's happened with us. But things changed. I'd love to say I saw carts coming, what changed our world with cart programs. I'd love to say I planned that, never saw it coming. I always hoped for something like it, but actually it came along and that changed our world completely. And now we work with BMS and with Novartis. So two of the original CART companies now have come to us to work with their lentiviral programs. So I think that's a fantastic accolade for what we've done as a company and a team. But also I think it doesn't really tell you about some of the harder days when you sit at work till 10 o'clock at night, wondering how you pay the bills next month, how you prioritize what you spend, how you think about how many people you can afford, and the nasty times when you have to actually make cuts as well. We've done that in the past too, and the more difficult times. So I think it's adversity teaches you far more every day than actually having a successful company. But on the good days, you learn and you move forward, and it's great. People pat you on the back, well done. On the bad days, you learn something, you take it with you, and you're here to fight the next day. And I think sometimes it was a day-by-day process to get to the next day or next week, and that's how we did it, really. But all credits to the team around me.
Yeah, well, I guess people generally hear about the huge successes in the news and the media, but biotech, as we know, having worked in it for so long, is such a hilly type of activity, and things can blow up through no fault of people's own endeavor, really, but the science biting you. So it's been an amazing story. Well, looking then at your own leadership style and changes in the company, and also alluding a little bit in this next section maybe to COVID and its impact. People talk about inflection points in growth that make leadership much more difficult and require changes. It'd be interesting to me to know what skills you've had to develop as the headcount has grown, and how your own style of leadership has changed, because you used to be in the trenches with a small team and now you're in maybe a corner office. I don't know. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, you're out of the main building where everything happens now, no question of that. We've had to expand, and I've got 5 or 6 sites up in Oxford. I think I moved twice in the last 18 months in various offices because we had to convert offices to labs, and such growth was the pace of that. Management style, well, I used to like to think I knew everybody in the company at 60 people. It's impossible with 750, and most of them I've never seen, because some of them are working at home, some of them are in the GMP suites. Even I'm not allowed in those during a production run. So you can imagine people work there all the time, and it's actually not, it's that remote thing you have to think about. So actually what it has taught us is communication's absolutely key. So I talk to my team every night at 5 o'clock. We talk for half an hour, 5 minutes. There's nothing to talk about that day. But it's made the bond between the team, quite strangely in COVID times, we don't see each other that much, far stronger than it ever was before. And everyone feels part of exactly what's going on, because everyone hears about it every single night. It's easy to be siloed if you're out on a fundraise, if you're out somewhere else or whatever. It's easy to be siloed sometimes and think everyone knows things when they actually don't. So that's one thing I've learned. It's communication. Probably over communication takes you to a place where you think you might just be doing enough, and if you feel like you're over communicating, you're probably just about doing enough, is what I've learned with people. Also, it's the whole thing about how many people working at home. I mean, I live in a very busy house with kids and God knows what else here, but actually people living on their own. So we've been very vigilant in watching for issues for people who are down, upset, feeling lonely or whatever, to try and help with that. So the managers have been very much on that brief to try and help people and think about how we get through the pandemic. As far as working with the pandemic is concerned, thank God in January 20 we introduced Teams. Without that, I think it would have been dire. You can just using phones, but whatever. Teams has been the mainstay of actually talking to all the teams, all the people, and actually the whole company sometimes as well. It's quite amazing what you can do with Teams if you actually have the bigger part of it to play with. And we've done some probably fairly regular addresses to the whole company, thanking them for what they've done, explaining where we've got to, and really making them understand exactly how we've changed the pandemic with what we've done, because actually everyone should be so proud of what's happened at Oxford Biomedica. We've made tens of millions of doses now, and we've saved thousands of lives. And if you want to motivate a company, there isn't much better to talk to a healthcare company about than saving lives. And it's why we all come into this in the first place. Actually, you want to come and do something that has a great patient benefit, and we can certainly say we've done that now.
That's fascinating. Are there any new roles that you've created at the senior level, specifically, do you think, because of the situation that we've all been facing with the pandemic? You know, are there leadership positions that you didn't have 2-3 years ago that are now at the top table?
Not because of the pandemic, because we've worked well together and we've done other things. I'd say, and one of the things we did do was bring a chief commercial officer in the US, because we needed that anyway, but actually bringing it in because our guys couldn't travel there made it very exciting to have those guys over there and functioning, going to see people, because normally some of our guys would be on the plane weekly, not too much, but probably fortnightly, going to the States, seeing people in Europe as well, but a lot of the States. And the fact you weren't going there and doing it all by teams became a little harder. The deals got done, everything's happened. So I've been amazed by how well that has gone over the period. It's been very functional both in our company and in other companies. That's gone well. But certainly having the people out there pushing the flesh again in the US has been very important too. So it's been a major hire for us. We're very pleased with what's happening over there. Other than that, we had expanded our management team. We call it the senior executive team, set quite a lot over the last few years to keep up with what we were doing. We had most positions covered already, so I don't think other than that we had to expand too much because of COVID.
Do you think, John, that in times of crisis and struggle and change, as we've been experiencing in the last couple of years generally, but you also have had that huge growth trajectory during this period, do you think people deprioritize personal development and people development initiatives, maybe because there's so much going on? Or have you managed as a company, and have you observed in other companies that you interact with, that has remained as a key agenda item?
Certainly to us it really has, because we work in a very competitive area. So we look at culture, we look at motivation, we look at development plans for people, career paths, all that type of thing, because we have to. And if we don't do that, and we don't pay what is a good salary for a good job as well, we find that people do move on and leave the company. So actually we do all of that, and what we find so beneficial by having a great culture is that people can feel free to speak up and talk and bring ideas to the company as well. And that's been such a great thing, and it's something we had in the early days when it was 60 people. You keep it 150, it's still possible. To keep it when you've got to 750 and still growing quite rapidly, then that becomes more of a challenge. You've got to put a lot of effort into it. We have the management development programs. We have off-site meetings for the top 40 people in the company 3-4 times a year. We put all of that together, and it's been quite a big thing to have them involved in our strategy, or thinking about what we're going to do next. Obviously, the board have to approve that, and so it's not their decision. We like to have their input to where we're going and how we go about it, because it's really important to have the buy-in of the guys you really rely on quite a lot. And it isn't always just my team, it's the one below that and the one below that and the one below that. You have to involve them and keep them as part of what you're doing.
Well, this brings me on to a question I think is very specific to our sector, life sciences, the sector in which you're operating. You know, you have a big customer base, you have collaborations and partners, but at the core, you have scientists and technical people. Is there a big difference between managing scientists and more business and customer-facing people, do you think?
Probably in a good position to answer that question, because I used to run a whole commercial division for Cephalon across Europe. So coming into a more scientific company, it was different, there's no question, but everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants success. Everyone wants to actually save patients' lives. So I think the ultimate goal is the same. It may be the scientists are more thoughtful about what's going on, more ponder exactly where they're going in with the job we're doing to try and save those lives, and where the sales reps might be more understanding. So you say, go off and do it. You probably have to explain yourself a bit more to a scientist, because they tend to have very, very big brains, I should say, very thoughtful, very, very clever people, and they need more rationale for what we're doing sometimes, but you get used to that. And I love working with it now. I think it's a fantastic place to be. And the science we produced over the years. I mean, 2 or 3 people early on brought this forward, but now there's dozens of them working on it. The science we've brought forward has just been an absolute honour to work with.
Excellent. I mean, if you really want, this is a topic we debate quite a bit at Coulter Partners, if you really want a world expert in a particular field, do you sometimes find that you put up with, maybe that's too strong a term, but you allow for a slightly different culture fit, than maybe you would normally look for around your core values? Do you have to, because you're competing for an unusual kind of skill set?
Well, normally, if things we've done in the past, I can sort of talk fairly blandly about. If you think about going and doing a headhunt for a senior position or a position in an organisation that makes a difference, you'll have in front of you 5 people, for example, who can do the job brilliantly. Now, what you look then for is the cultural fit, to make sure it fits in with the team and the ideals we have as a business and how we want to go forward and our values. So I think in general, you have a good chance to find people that fit the business very well. And I think that comes down to the skill of headhunters to get the right. I mean, the ones I've used over the past know me very well, they know my team very well now, and effectively try and find people that fit into the team. Because otherwise, I mean, one of the biggest things you have to make sure is that certainly the senior team has loyalty, cohesion, and works together.
Understood. Okay. Well, let's move on maybe to talk a bit about external relationships. I mean, you've named some organizations with which we're very familiar, and they really are extremely varied. I mean, if you look at Novartis, Axovant, the Serum Institute of India, these are all incredibly different organizations with very different corporate cultures. Tell me a little bit about how you keep them happy, how you juggle all this as a team and an organization.
Comes back to having a fantastic team running it, looking after it, and actually looking after the customers. Our first rationale is if we take a customer on, we don't take them on unless we can satisfy them and do the job properly and have the space and time to do it. So that's our first thing. On from there, I think if you're working with the CDMO side of things, working with partners, they have to feel secure in the fact that their IP and what they're working with you on is secure to them and them only. I mean, that's something we take for granted within the business. Then on from there, again, we're very customer centric. So we have a dedicated team to each customer. We're working with them all the time. I mean, working on CMC nowadays in gene and cell therapy, you could argue it's as important as having the drug, because so many companies have fallen down on this CMC. So where we shine, where we've done well with partners, is we work with them. We make sure we have total involvement in their thought process around CMC, transparency between us and them, and we work with them day by day. It's almost day by day with our customers, talking to them every single day. Steering committees probably once a month, and making sure they're happy with what we're doing and vice versa, and we understand each other. If we do that, we tend to get good results. And it's actually something that we've honed over time. Novartis was a learning ground, of course. That's where we learned this part of the business. And on from there, we've actually had some fantastic relationships going forward with customers as well. So, I mean, each one we build, each one we have rapport with. A lot of them you get right up to the very top. So if they've got any issues, they would come to me, and it happens quite a lot. And we resolve it very quickly. We put the teams back together, and we go to a place where things are always running smoothly, and we satisfy our customers. And the basis we're doing this is, and the reason we're successful, is we satisfy people and do what we promised. That's exactly why we're successful.
Very interesting. Thank you. But now you are a public company, and you have obviously the markets to think about. You talked about communications earlier within the company, but of course there's that whole external piece, relationships with investors. But there's more than that. There's also governments, and there's the plus and the perhaps burden of being COVID heroes. The PR, not just the investor relations, Boris Johnson opening Oxbox, the pressures. Is this aspect of your role enjoyable, John? Tell me a little bit about this and how you as a leader and also as your team deal with this external piece.
So if you go back, I mean, if the external piece has become far more apparent since we've been working on the COVID vaccine. I mean, before that, we were well known in the UK biotech world. We weren't being talked about in Prime Minister's question time at all. And there were certain things, having the Prime Minister down, having Dominic Raab down, having Lord Bethnal down. We've had a lot of people down to see us. So it's great for morale in the company to see we're being taken so seriously. But we started off working on the vaccine with the consortium back in Oxford, and that was very interesting. And we were being a scale-up partner there, had no idea where this was going. We then had AZ come into the process, and they took over the drug at that point in time on a not-for-profit basis. And we worked very hard with them to drive things forward. Now, what we did was, for this was quite a change in what we'd been doing. We'd always worked in lentivector and lentivector only, viral vector. And this was an adenovirus, which we always thought we could do, but we never had done. We also had to scale up from a 200-litre bioreactor to a 1,000-litre bioreactor. And again, technically, on paper, it looks like we can do it quite straightforwardly, but we hadn't done it before. So all of a sudden, inadvertently, we put ourselves in a bit of a shop window. And if you succeed, great. If you don't, the world will know about it. And that going forward, we then were very successful. It's worked out very well. But I think publicly, we're probably AZ's top performer, or in the top 2 performers worldwide in manufacturing on what we get from our batches. So we have done very, very well. That brings with it, of course, the visit from the Prime Minister. It brings with it the visits from other government dignitaries, which take time, but they're wonderful to do. And we've been very involved as well with the task force, got very involved with Kate Bingham, very involved with some of the other characters as well. And they've been so supportive of what we've done. And I have to say, I've really, really enjoyed that part of the job. It's not something we did as much as we do now, but certainly it's been really enjoyable. And it's great for the company. And by the company, I mean everything to do with it, our stakeholders, but then especially our staff, to get that recognition and to hear being talked about in Prime Minister's question times week after week at one point in time about the AZ vaccines coming through, it's being made. We know we're making a lot of it going to the UK. We have no idea where it goes ultimately. AZ take it, but we know we put a lot back into the UK. And we made tens of millions of doses, as I said before, and now saved thousands of lives. And every employee at Oxford Biomedica needs to be so proud of what they've achieved there, because it's something that you set out to do when you start your career in healthcare.
Fantastic. John, we've seen businesses pulled out of shape to some degree by COVID, some because they were doing something, but then they had the potential to do something in COVID, whether it was diagnostic testing or producing some piece of equipment or whatever it was. They were suddenly growing colossally. And you've obviously you've talked a bit about navigating that, but you also have a complex hybrid strategy. You've got your own product side, etc. How do you keep track of all of this? There's huge amounts of data, there's lots of technical rabbits all running at the same time. How do you make decisions and allocate resources between them? I mean, we clearly could kidnap you and run an MBA course on this, but how do you measure relative performance and how do you manage all of that? A few clues would be great, because the reason for these questions for the AESC audience really is, we're trying to recruit leaders, and it would just be great to have some insights into how good leaders tackle these things.
So again, a bit of history would help here, I think. We were a product company. We went to CDMO, pivoted across to that to work alongside our products. And then development in UK funding was not great. We had mostly UK shareholders, and we found we couldn't get funding for our products. So we scaled them back quite significantly. And we then decided to concentrate on getting the CDMO working properly. Everyone asked us to invest in the company to be cash flow self-sufficient, and we got there. We actually made that point, and we got to that position. Then we've obviously been more successful again on top of that. When now have a decent balance sheet with a lot of cash in it, we can now go back to our products aggressively and invest in those again. It was always the intention, it was always the thing to do, but our programs we had with Sire, we have our Parkinson's drug. We developed that. We licensed that out on a preclinical basis, ready for phase 1-2. I'd planned to do it ourselves, but effectively, with the offer at the time, the risk profile of the company, it was the right to take the money and put that 30 million in the bank up front. It was the right thing to do with that question. I always would love to have taken that to clinic myself. I think it was a fantastic drug, but time will tell. On the other front, other stuff is much further back. We're probably about 18 months to 2 years away from the clinic, but with aggressive plans to go back into phase 1-2s now, aggressive plans to take those drugs further forward in that as well, if the timing is right, but also look outside and see if there's things we can bring in from academia and maybe later stage stuff as well. So it's very aggressive to look at this. And it's been a bit revamped, putting a lot more money into it now by having a new chairman and a new board members as well. We've obviously got Vogt Olivo of ex-UCB fame, who's a great guy to work with, Dame Kay Davis, a great geneticist, and then of course Michael Hayden, who's renowned across the world for his work in drug development. So the board now is supportive of this. And as far as running it every day, it's been smaller than it had been when I first got here, but we've always had it. We've always kept the key leaders and quite a good team around us. As we get further into this, we'll expand, we'll get more people into it as well. And it's a natural thing for me to run both, because if you think about running Cephalon, for example, my European business in Cephalon I ran there, it had manufacturing, it had drug development, it had all these other bits and pieces. So we have manufacturing, but it's something we do with partners and make money from it to fund what we do as well with our own drugs. So they fit exquisitely together, and we get so many ideas from what we do with partners to maybe look at drug delivery systems and how we can make things better for our own drugs as well. And I've always been a great believer you can have a diverse business with great people in the business to report to and look after each bit for you. So I think the key to it is having the right leaders in the right places, work collegiately with their other colleagues, and there's cross fertilization of ideas between them to make sure we keep driving the business forward. So I'd say it's one of those things where years ago everyone told me don't do drug development, do drug development, don't do manufacturing, just outsource it. Of course, that's the US. On the UK side, they said don't do drug development, they said do manufacturing. And then the world became a very different place when so many failures came in CMC around gene cell therapy. And people often say to us now the key thing to have in gene cell therapy is a good manufacturing platform. We have that. So now we have what could be deemed to be the stronger part. I'm not totally sure it is a stronger part, actually. I think you have to having drugs as well as a huge value driver for shareholders. So having the two together could be very exquisite, as I said earlier, and driving those two forward together, I think is really important for us at this point in time. And saying that, I've got a fantastic team that does it all for me. So it links up, it works, and it's having the right people and the right personalities around you to make that work.
Well, you've certainly been riding the waves of evolution very effectively. I mean, there was a time when, and this applies in our industry so much, when diagnostics and vaccines were not particularly high on the agenda for investors, for example. I think, that's really radically changed. So
it really has.
I guess as a leader, you do need to be able to pivot and evolve, but also it does help that you've had that breadth from effectively the customer side before you came into this business with your pharma background. So bricks and mortar versus virtual. I mean, there's been so much written and discussed about this. And of course, at the hiring end, we're looking at this all the time. But your footprint's definitely a blend of real physical location, but also accessing the right talent and building a global team. Tell us a little bit about your attitude to having people all together in one place, or the virtual structures. How's that all evolving for you?
So we have, as history goes, everything in Oxford, because we looked at lots of plants around the world at various points in time of our lives. And what I realized was if I went up to some of the plants in Finland or America, it would take me a day to get there. It was no joke, it took me a day to get there. I'd walk into the plant about 4:30 in the afternoon. And having the technology we have, having the manufacturing platform we have, if you have issues, you want to solve them very, very quickly. And having your key guys close to a place to go and walk into the place, think about it, fix it. We can fix things. We have issues. And what's great about cell and gene therapy manufacturing is we know people doing it will face lots of issues that we've solved already, because we've actually been at the coalface for a very long time. So when competition comes into you, you've got a bit of an edge there, because they've got to face what we've faced previously. All that said, we now have, all the way through COVID, we've had probably 250 of 700, 750 in offices or in the suites all the time. And the guys have been going all the time with the manufacturing and analytics guys. They have to be working to keep this all going. So that said, we probably had 400 to 500 at home at various times, and everything has worked. Everything has functioned. So now we can take a lot of heart in the fact we've seen that the job gets done, people work hard, they have very committed ways of doing things, and are loyal to what the company wants to do. So we can be more flexible now going forward about how we operate. So we haven't yet laid out a dictate about what we're looking for from people, but we will be flexible about how many days a week they have to come to the office. And I doubt you'll see too many people going to the office 5 days a week in the future. And I don't think we'll go back to that. We'll find it a different way of doing it, because we know it can be very efficient to do it otherwise. And it works, and it seems to work for people as well. People would like to have some flexibility around their working week, and provided the job gets done in the way we want it done, then we can be quite flexible back with them.
Interesting. Well, it's a huge topic, and I still think it's hard to plan ahead for what sort of a footprint you're going to have, especially, I mean, I think manufacturing almost helps focus because you've got to have people in making it all happen. In terms of your own personal development, John, have you ever used coaches and formal advisors, mentors? Have certain people helped you on your journey? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, coaches probably never really. I mean, I've been to lots of courses. I've been to lots of skills courses and everything else like that. But I wouldn't say I've had somebody trying to adapt what I do or how I do it. But I've had some great bosses. So I think you learn a lot from working closely with someone like that. I was very fortunate to work with Frank Baldino, who founded Cephalon when I was there. And I got into the exec committee back at Cephalon. So in the top 10, I probably went in mid-ranking. I was in the top 10 in the one of the top exec committee, one of the top 10 in the company. So I got to spend a lot of time with the team there who'd grown the company from when I got there 150 million. I think the valuation at the end was about 6 billion when I left. And that's quite a ride. That's a lot. You learn a lot by the baptism of fire, I think, really. I was second person into Europe. By the time I left, we had 1,000. So I learned lots of new things I hadn't done before, and tended to get more right than I got wrong, which is why I got promoted a few times. But actually, it was a fantastic experience. So that was, so we say, a very hard, fast ride, but actually so enjoyable. Then you come across and think about doing the science side of things. There's people who've helped me immensely over my career. I'd go to Ken Noonan, I'd go to Lynn Drummond, the ex-Rothschild banker. Alan Goodman of the old Avlar fame has been very influential on how I think I've done things in the past. And at OXB, the non-exec Andrew Heath he's retired now, but he's been an absolute godsend to me to work with over time. And he's retired. We've now got Rock, who's great as well. So I'm really enjoying working with Rock. And so I've had a great bunch of people. So coaches know, but mentors without question. And people I owe them an awful lot.
And do you support others to have a personal development budget and attitude of looking for help? I'm thinking here, if you look back, you've done incredibly well, but if you look back, would you advise your younger self in hindsight to spend time and effort on personal development with people like mentors and coaches? It's obviously been great for you on the mentor side.
Well, interesting question. If I looked at some of the things you have to do now to get the jobs that I've had in the past, I don't think I'd have got them if I had to go up against the systems you have to go up against now. It's quite interesting. The processes have changed so much. But I get them, who knows? But actually, I think I really do recommend that people take coaches and mentors nowadays within our business. A lot of people have those. And you need that sounding board sometimes, because the pace of growth, and this is more recently than I'd say than previously, the pace of growth means you don't get time to think sometimes, you get time to do. You need to sit back sometimes, reflect and work out how you make yourself better. And that needs some help sometimes, some prompting to work out what you need to get to the next stage you want to go to. And it isn't always what actually we want, but it's actually also what the individual wants in their career. We try and cater for that as well. And there's nothing, I remember my old mentor Frank actually at Baldino saying, when you see someone leave and get a great job elsewhere, you hate to lose them because they're great, but you actually then are very pleased for them because they've got the great job, and you should be very proud. And often in the Cephalon days, the way of working, lots of people went back later in their careers and did things again for Cephalon. A great example of that is Catherine Isted, who came in from Peel Hunt to us to be our IR person. She left very recently to go and be CFO at Renewal, and she's great. She did a fantastic job for us, and I wish her the very best. And we'll miss her, but we wish her the best, because it's a great thing she's doing, and she's quite capable of doing that. So, and that job was not going to be available in our company for a time to come. So she had to actually think about her career over and above Oxford Biomedica. And that's the right thing sometimes.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Just coming to our AESC world and search and leadership advisory consultants, who obviously are a large part of the audience. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with our world and what value you see firms like us adding, and how we could improve as a sector. We're constantly evaluating how we could do that, and AESC help us hugely with that. But it would be really interesting to know your perspective on that, and also on the diversification and growth of the other types of consultancy and leadership development services that there are out there.
Well, I think it's been amazing how you get supported by the agencies, and you've been working with a few over the years. You get to know people, and they start to get a feel for your business. And so, when you want to do something, I think it's almost having a rapport with the person who understands how you think, how you work, and then you can find that actually they find people that fit in to the team you want to have as well. Now, I don't want people just like me. I really don't. What I want is a diverse group that comes together and thinks and solves problems. So, but you want to have a basic loyalty and rapport within the group, that you have a lot of fun while you're doing that. And so I think when you get to know somebody well, they can do a great job for you, and they'll bring you 5 people who can do the job with a selection of personalities. That's a massive value. Is you find 5 of the best normally in the job you're going to find to search for, and you get a range of personalities, and you can then judge, working with them, who would be the best fit to the team. And that is no mean feat, let's be honest about it. We've all got things right, we've all got things wrong. The cost of getting something wrong at a high level, firstly, is financially significant, but lost time in getting the job done is significant too. So you rely on that type of person to help you find the right person and make the company prosper. So there is a partnership there to make sure they're playing a part in the company going forward, because an investment here is actually making sure we get the right people to drive the business forward at the right time. I can tell you there's nothing more disruptive than having to unravel something afterwards after a year. And then you have to do it all again. So they've been huge value. I've seen the service, the thought process, and the involvement in the company from all people we work with go up to a different level over the last 5 years. And the thought process going into it, some of the psychometrics that go into it now as well, to see if the person will fit and they have the same values as we need in the company. All of that makes your hires safer, much safer than they would have been in the past, and much safer than they would have been otherwise. So I'm a great supporter at the right level of the right jobs to actually have the people helping us do that. You have other methods nowadays for would never use them for some of the senior jobs, but you have LinkedIn, you have other ways of doing things. You don't have some of the, should we say, the safety nets you have working with an agency. So for me, I can see my senior jobs, I'll always be using an agency. That's the right way to go.
Thank you for that perspective. And just finally, I think we can't really have an interview with a leader like yourself without talking a bit about ESG and diversity. You've touched on it anyway a couple of times in some of your other answers. I would say, just being cheeky for a second, that some time ago, Oxford Biomedica didn't look like the most diverse organisation, but that's changed and evolved quite considerably in the last few years. You've got women on your board, and that's just one aspect of diversity, clearly. But if you look at the stakeholders today, most are obviously talking much more eloquently than they used to be about D&I and ESG, and say that these are absolutely key to focus on. But when you're focusing on growth and rapidly evolving business like yours, how do you get it really at the top table as a topic, and not just as a sort of moral imperative, but in terms of the actual success of the business? It would be really good to hear from you as CEO of a growth company, how you maintain these topics on the agenda.
So what you do find is nowadays that the younger generation coming to the company, and we have the majority of people in the company will be less than 30, coming to the company, would actually be very aware of these things. And it's very important to them that you see diversity and inclusion, really, really important to them. And to the point where I could quote many things they want to get involved in, celebrate various special days the country has, that type of thing. And you get involved in those now. You have to be seen to be supporting that type of thing. Also, I think ESG is becoming very important because we've learned so much about, again, COVID, another thing to think about, mental health, all those different things like that. We've learned so much about that, having to do with things we've done throughout the pandemic. And you want to be people looking out for each other, people looking out after each other, and making sure you have this whole inclusion situation where people don't fall into groups or we say silos within the company. So we work very hard to make sure that's the case. On top of that, now we have to make sure we do them. I mean, if we didn't want to do this, we'd have to anyway, but we do want to do it because your reporting is now very, very governed by making sure you're doing the right things on those funds. And we do so much now to make sure we have the right groups. Again, some of the demographics in the company, of our total company, 53% of women, and it goes up the organization quite significantly. We've yet to balance it out in some senior management team to be as inclusive as that, but time will, with that balance, it will come. So effectively, we are working hard to go down that front. We're making sure we have the right structure on the board to make sure we satisfy things there as well. But it's just so important to us to be doing this now, and you have to be seen to be a good employer. To certainly keep your staff motivated, it's important that you actually show interest in these things as well, and show not just that you have an interest in it, but you're actually doing something about it. And I think that's the key thing too.
Well, this has been really fascinating and we've learned a huge amount. Thank you so much for your time, John. Really appreciate it. And I'll hand back to Claire.
Thank you, Bianca, and thank you, John, for sharing such superb insights with us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today, and the great work that the Oxford Biomedica team has done in saving so many lives. Thank you.